In this video, we'll be adding the coloured glazes to our underpainting in oils. Hi, I'm Marion Dutton. Welcome to MazArt Studio. Now, if you missed part 1, the underpainting, you can find a link to that video in the description box below. And if you'd like to paint along with me, you can grab your free tracing, your free reference photo, and your free PDF guide. And again, all the links to that are in the description box below. So without further ado, let's begin to add the colours to our underpainting. So our canvas and our underpainting is completely dry now, and we're going to begin, as always, by putting a very thin layer of oil medium over the whole canvas. I'm using Zest-It Clear Medium, but any fat medium will work, such as a linseed oil or a walnut oil. And again, I cover all this in the material guide. I'm going to go in, I'm using a nice soft brush to apply the medium. This is a very thin layer of oil that we put over the underpainting. Take a paper towel and just very lightly wipe off that excess medium. You're looking for a very thin layer. Beginning in the sky and mixing a little bit of white with some yellow. And whatever's above, we're going to transfer down into the little pond. You'll notice the paint is going on very, very thinly. And next to that, I'm applying a very thin layer of orange. This is cadmium orange. And here I'm taking some white, some mixing white with a little cobalt blue for a lovely bright blue. Start in the corners. And of course, whatever's above is also in the water. Give the brush a little wipe and we'll start a little crisscross blending. Focusing on meeting the blue and the orange. And then where the yellow meets the orange. Notice that I'm keeping the yellow and the blue separate so we don't end up with a green. Working on the distance now, I'm going to add a little bit more of the blue. This is cobalt blue and a little green. A little sap green to the sky colour. And we'll just work on some distant hills. Keeping the edges nice and soft. You can always use your finger just to blur and blend. As we come a little further forward, I'm going to take that colour, add a little more green, and this time a little more black, just to bring this colour forward. So a much darker value. I'll warm that colour slightly now with a little yellow. And a little bit of orange. And we'll pop on a few little highlights, but keeping them quite subtle. Taking a liner brush now and a little black, we'll pop some dark trunks in. And we'll use a wipeout tool to scratch in. Or you can use a palette knife. We will take sap green and add it to this yellow, a little orange, and a little mixing white for a nice light warm green. Block the grasses in at the back. Not worrying about going over those trees. Putting that paint on nice and thin. Using some green and a little black, we'll add some shadows. I'm still with this old warm brush. I'm still applying the paint nice and thin. Taking yellow and a little cadmium green, we'll start to add thicker highlights. A little titanium white. And I'm applying the paint much thicker when we begin our highlights. Moving to the foreground now, and back to sap green and a little black. I'm still with the scrubby brush. Let's block in this foreground area nice and thinly. And I'm using that same colour just to drag up a few grasses. When it comes to the water, make sure you drag that colour down into the water. Moving to the foreground trees, I'm going to go into some extra black, and I've switched to a small flat brush. We want these trunks to be nice and dark and silhouetted against that lovely lighter area. Once I've got the tree trunks in place, I'll switch to a liner brush and begin to add some of the branches. This time I'm switching to a fan brush, and I'm going to go into some yellow, a little of the cadmium green, plenty of paint on that brush, really bash those bristles open. Back into that lovely dark green. Working on these trees. And this time I'll use some blue and white. for a little bit of cooler highlights. Bringing the trunk forward pushes those trees behind. Whilst I've got the dark on my brush, I'm going to bring a little of this into the water, allowing it to blend and soften. Once I've got the reflections how I want, I'm just going to very lightly soften with a mop. Staying with our lighter green now, I'm going to just begin a few little highlights. And once again, I'll use this lovely light colour to begin working on these trees. Switching once again to this lovely blue and white colour. Here I'm just adding a little white with my finger just to get a little bit of distance, and then finally going back to our very dark green, which is the green and the black. And once again we'll begin adding those tree trunks. And also adding in a few darker branches. Moving forward in the painting, we're going to go back to a mid-tone green, which is some sap green and a little yellow, and some of that white. Once again, I'm scrubbing this colour nice and thinly, going a little darker in the corners. And for the sandy area, we're going to go into a little burnt sienna with some white. Taking burnt sienna and a little burnt umber and a little ultramarine blue. Keep those shadows nice and soft. Taking a little of the dark green and umber, we'll just brush on a little glaze over the main tree trunk. I'm not going to worry about covering all of that underpainting. Back now to our lovely yellow-green to begin doing some highlights. Once again, we'll go back to our shadow colour, and I'm going to throw in just a little purple this time. And we want to create a little bit of this dappled effect. Make sure that your strokes stay nice and horizontal. Use my finger to soften slightly or you can use a nice soft brush. Taking a liner brush and again just softening. Back to our green, our very dark green, to continue with some of this dappling effect on the grass. Picking out a few little light areas now between these little dapples, between the shadowed effects. I'm going to dance in just a little light. Back to our burnt sienna with the white. This time we're going to add a little more white and a little orange just to warm that colour. Throw in a little yellow to keep it very warm. This is a much lighter colour and the final highlights are going on much thicker. Use that same colour just to highlight the outer edge of the main tree, just to give it a little rim light. Picking up a little cobalt blue. And brushing that onto the shadowed side. Dragging a little green on there as well. Back to our dark green now. And of course back to our lighter green to pick out a few highlights. Switching to a flat brush now, I'm going to begin picking up some of this dark brown. I've added a little blue to that, and we'll create a few little stones and pebbles. And picking up the highlight colour. Picking up a little of the cobalt blue and white just to add a little detail on this tree in the distance. Finally, I'm going with a much stronger highlight now as we do a final check over the painting. We're really looking at our contrasts to see where we can get some lighter lights and darker darks. Be careful not to overdo this stage. Now that I'm quite happy with all that, let's thin the paint down with a little medium for some final grasses. Taking a little white with a small amount of blue and a nice flat brush, add in a few little water lines. Lightly dragging that across. And again, back to that liner, first with some lovely dark green. And then switching to a lighter green. And here I'm just mixing a blue and white, and I'm going to add a few wildflowers. And I think we'll call that a finished painting. I really do hope you enjoy painting this one as much as I have, and that also it might give you some ideas how you can take your own photographs and turn them into a beautiful painting. If you are getting value from these lessons, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content. And also add your comments in the description box below. Let me know what kind of paintings you'd like to see on this channel. If you do have a go at this painting, don't forget to apply to join the MazArt tribe over on Facebook, where you'll be able to share your versions with me on there. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again in the next video.